Welcome to Next Practices, Juan. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your experience and your wisdom on supporting students with our audience today.
Thank you for the invitation, Kathy, and it's a pleasure being here.
So, here on Next Practices, we explore how to use data informed approaches to answer urgent questions and go beyond best practices to solve today's challenges in higher ed landscape. With that in mind, what are the most pressing student success challenges that your institution is working to solve?
Okay, there's several, of course. Right now, uh, one of the important things to have, at least at the university, is to reconnect the students. After 2 years of one completely virtual and the second one, I think we struggle to engage students in some of our campus activities. So that's number one. Number two, we were able to get some funding to increase our advising efforts across campus, and we have a very young but talented group of advisors, and something that takes years sometimes at other institutions, which is to develop the workforce around advising. For us, we were lucky enough to get some funding from the state to fund our advising program, and we were able to actually develop advising offices in each of our colleges, which is something that we didn't have. So one of the challenges right now is that to streamline the advising efforts across campus, everybody to be on the same page, that the advising that they receive in the College of Arts and Sciences is the same type of advising that they receive in the College of Business and vice versa, and also work on the handoff, which is something that is in theory very simple to do, but sometimes students get lost in the bureaucratic processes of the universities, and something as simple as, he's no longer my student. Can this person go here? Here you go. You now belong to a different college, to a different advisor. We have failed to do that in a very, I guess, efficient way. So one of the things that I don't supervise advising directly, but it is something that obviously affects the students that we recruit, and I am in charge of recruiting. So, and I also have a background in advising. That was my first job in higher ed. And when I was a student, I was an advisor. And I also have a background in the university registrar. So I work with the catalogs and curriculums and all those sort of things. So that is, I think, the number one thing that we need to do right now with advising. And one of the things that we have struggled is that. So I'm trying to put two simple concepts into this. Make a handoff or make a transition that is visible. In other words, that the student sees you doing it, and sees you talking to the advisor in the other college, and make sure that you document the transition. In other words, use the system to code the new advisor. We have is something that it takes perhaps 5 seconds to do, and that is something that is not well done. Why do we need to make it visible? So that way the student sees, and they even go to the website and give them their contact information and things like that, show them the picture of the advisory, we have it. And the documentation is, so whenever they run some of the systems for degree audits and those sort of things, they actually can see the person, and that the other person on the other end of the line, the other advisor, now can run reports and use the system to identify the students and inherit, I guess, this new student into their student population that they serve.
So it sounds to me like if it's fair to summarize what you're seeing as the most important challenge is to re-engage your students, to build relationship with your students, to make it visible who is there to support them, and to make the transitions and the bureaucracy across your campus easily accessible to students so that they understand where they need to go for help, especially after a few years of being less engaged with your institution.
That is correct. And then you right now in the fall of 2022, you're gonna have in your undergraduate student population, for example. We're going to have seniors that I guess were freshmen or sophomores when the pandemic started. We're going to have juniors that were in high school when the pandemic started. You're going to have sophomores that did their last school year in high school virtually, and now we're going to have a freshman class that were affected by the pandemic right in the middle of the high school years. So reconnecting with these students um, is going to be key, because if we want to increase our retention, if we want to increase our graduation rate, that's going to be critical because they went through a year or perhaps 2 years of non-traditional instruction, and we don't know how much they lost, and we need to make sure that we know how much they lost, and we need to know, and we need to make sure to bring it up to speed with our expectations. And one of the important things I believe in order for us to do that is to remove the transaction out of our daily routines. So if we're going to have to focus on the students more, we need to remove as much transactional work, uh, for example, in an advising session. So if you put any advising session in any 60-minute advising session, let's say, we begin describing what happens in an advising session with the student. If you're spending 45 minutes of the 60-minute advising session in trying to figure out a schedule, you're investing 75% of the advising session in something that is not meaningful to the student, because if you have to finish in 1 hour because you already have the next student coming, then you're only going to allow 15 minutes to look at what I call the human side of advising, that interaction, that direct interaction with a student. So how do you shift that? So how can you spend 45 minutes talking to the student and only, let's say, 15 minutes doing the transaction side of advising, which is figuring out a schedule based on the student needs, based on the student wants, based on whether they have a practice or whether they work or whether they have to commute from the other side of town, or those sort of things. So we do have one of the tools from Civitas, which is a scheduler that has allowed us to do that. That has allowed us to change the transaction side of advising into more human side of advising. Because I know you're in the software business, but it doesn't matter what you tell me. There's not a single software out there that can identify if the student is struggling at home, if they're going, if the family is going through something, if they lost a member of the family due to whatever reason, if they're having economic struggles. I don't know. Nobody can understand. There's no system that can tell you that. It's going to have to be the human eye, the human intuition that perhaps can identify these factors and how these factors are affecting the student. And it is important. If we want to reconnect with our students, we need to make sure that we work more efficiently, and by that I think removing the transactional side, all these transactions that are routine, I guess, and that just takes time. Let a computer figure that out, because the computer won't be able to figure out the human side of advising. So making that shift, I think is important, and I think it's going to create a lot of differences and good opportunities for our students in the future.
We talked in a previous conversation about how you're doing this exact work, not only with your currently enrolled students, but with students prior rising freshmen, students who are unusually graduated before orientation, starting to engage students in this way. Do you mind sharing a little bit about the work that you're doing to help with enrollment of entering students, as well as building this relationship with continuing students through making the registration experience more about easing the registration experience with technology, so that your advisors can connect and build relationship with the students?
Absolutely. The model in higher ed is that students register during the student orientation. That's usually, I want to say, 95% of the universities use this model. The student attends orientation. One of the sessions is, get your schedule, whether it's pre-populated or whether you're gonna do it from scratch. That's usually the model. Since about 80% of our student population of our incoming freshman class comes from local high schools and regional high schools, high schools that are maybe 90 miles away from Laredo, we do a very aggressive recruiting with them. We visit their campuses often during the school year. And in the month of April and May, we do something called on-site registration, where we actually go to these high schools, and for the students already committed to attend Texas A&M International University, we actually take an army of people from the university, and we take advisors, and we take financial aid, and we take orientation programs, and we do kind of like a A&M International fair at the school library, and it takes a lot of logistics, and it takes a lot of planning. But once we're there, students from that particular high school, they sign up for an advising session, and we provide them with 45-minute sessions. And most of the time in the bigger high schools, we have the capacity to see 80 students during the day. We usually start at 9. We usually end at 3. And one of the tools that we use to make this event successful is the actual scheduler. So even before they step a foot on our campus, before they go into a classroom, and even before they graduate from high school, they actually have a university schedule already, which is meaningful to them, especially for the high number of first generation students that we have. About 60% of our students are first generation, about 80% of them are Pell recipients. So it's a very unique student population. So during these events, they actually sit down with an advisor and they build their schedule. And we use the scheduler from Civitas to build their schedule. And it's a schedule that starts from zero. We don't pre-populate, these are the classes that you're gonna take. We actually ask them, do you have any transportation issues? Are you gonna rely on public transportation? Are you gonna drop your little brother or sister at school, and then you're gonna go to the university? So, do you work? Are you part of any sports program? The practice, all those sort of things. So we build that into the system, the scheduler, and then we take a look to see if the student already took any classes while they were in high school, and we build it from zero. So we have people trained to provide that good customer service during their first ever advising session at college, and they're very focused on that. And obviously, the less transaction and the less time you spend thinking about different options on your schedule, the more you can focus on them and trying to close the deal, to make sure that to feel the student feel welcome to the university, and that they know that they made the right decision of staying or committed to Texas A&M International. So we sit down with them, and we actually use the tool, and we teach the tool on scheduling at that event. So even before they, again, step a foot on campus, they actually are able to see the tool that they're going to be using when they become, when they start here, when they're ready to register for the second semester. We're showing them the tool that they're going to be using. And since it's a web-based tool, we're able to use it anywhere that has internet access, which is something great. And we were able to serve more students in these events. We were close of actually suspending what I call the signature recruiting event of this institution because of the lack of human capital and the lack of time. But scheduler, it was one of the solutions that we were able to implement, and we were able to use, and it saved these events, and we were able to serve more students. And again, the important thing is to focus on the student and forget these transactions. Make it less visible, I guess, and focusing more on the experience, and scheduler has allowed us to do that.
It sounds like this is quite a large event. I'm assuming that this is a cross-functional collaboration with your campus. What different offices and groups across your campus are working together to pull this event together for your students?
So I'm going to think about the flow of the event so I can tell you. So the students come in, we have a signing table there, and in the signing table is usually managed by the recruiter that is in charge of that particular high school. And just to go back to the previous question, we focus on the local high schools in the month of April. and then we go to the regionals in the month of May. So just to put that out there. So then the student goes in, signs. They have a folder prepared with them that includes ranking, SAT scores, all those sort of things. Everything is within FERPA. It's a one-to-one, so we don't share all this with everybody there. So we talk to the students. We kind of do a screening of them. If we need to do a change of major, for example, we have personnel from the Office of Admissions there. So we have admissions and the Office of Recruiting. The recruiter is in charge of the event, but he or she has the support from the administration of the recruiting office. So once they pass that and once they're ready to get advised, then we send them to the group of advisors. And we have a combination of students from different from advisors from different colleges, and but most of them are from the Office of Recruitment. So we have other recruiters advising. We have some of the part-timers also advising, and we have a few college advisors, and we also have a few advisors from the Office of Retention. So just advising, we probably have about 3 to 5 different offices helping. We need to understand that while we're doing that, there's also registration going on at the university. So I don't have 5 advisors from the College of Business. They spare one with me. Once they're done with that, then they go to we have a small setup there, and they learn about study abroad. So the Office of International Engagement is there. They also know about the vaccination requirements. Here in Texas, we have the requirement of bacterial meningitis. So they have the student health offices there. We also have the TRIO programs there, trying to recruit the students. We also have a few student organizations sometimes that they set up booths just to provide information. We have the Office of Student Conduct there, so they can know about some of the things that they can do while they're on campus, and those sort of things. A few times we have had faculty, but they don't have a role. They just walk around, and there was one time that it was extremely cool because I stopped by one of the advising sessions, and I was looking at the schedule, and I saw the name of the faculty member that was with me. So I was like, oh, by the way, he's going to be your student in the fall semester. And the student was like, oh, my goodness, the faculty member's here. So we take a few faculty members once in a while just to walk around, but they don't take I guess, a role in the session. They just, they're there in case something is needed, or in this case, it was a good introduction to the faculty member. And then they end with the Office of Student Orientation and Leadership programs, because they actually registered for orientation, and we use some of the computers that they have there at the high school, and they register for one of the sessions. And once that finished, we provide them with a T-shirt, and then we have like a photo booth there where they can take a picture and use social media and things like that. So, and sometimes we have our PR person, our social media person there. So, I just went over, and we probably talking about 30 people helping in the
Yeah.
event from 10, 12 different departments. So it takes a lot. So imagine passing everybody through high school security and making sure that we find parking spaces at the high schools. Sometimes our lunch is like 30 minutes because we run over the next session, and we just bring pizzas from different places, or they eat actually high school food. They go to the high school cafeteria. But it is a fun event. It's a way to connect with folks in a different way, with departments in a different context, I guess, outside of their normal day-to-day location. That is the beautiful university that we have. There's a lot of people that look forward to these events, and like I mentioned, it is our signature event, and it's heavy on it's a lot of it takes a lot of planning. It's very stressful. But it gives us a good parameter at the end of May to see how we're doing with our recruitment efforts and how much we have to push and where we have to push in the 3 months that we have for registration prior to the beginning of the semester. So where do we put our marketing efforts? Where do we put our funds? Do we need to push this sector of the city more than the other ones? Should we focus more on the parents, which out of town school didn't perform the way we wanted, what do we do? So it allow us to do that in a better way. We don't have, by then we already have, I want to say 75% of our incoming freshman class already registered. So then we can focus more on what are we missing, where do we focus, in what area do we focus more, and also gives us a lot of time to prepare for the next recruiting year.
A few things that I heard you say about the impacts of doing your enrollment this way is that, one, you're able to be more efficient in your scheduling, which allows more time with advisors to get to build relationship and get to know the students and actually understand what's going on with them as a human. What are some of the challenges that they might be facing that might make college more difficult? So I'm curious, since shifting to this way of doing enrollment, this way of doing scheduling, where you're having scheduler do sort of the heavy lifting of figuring out the schedule for the student and the human doing the more empathetic work of connecting with the student, what kinds of results have you seen for your students? How has it changed the experience for your students?
So I'm going to focus on two important success measures: retention and graduation. It's going to be hard to measure I think, retention the last couple of years, just because of they were abnormal. But what we saw was that for those students that started as a freshman, building their schedules using scheduler, and those that were advised with this model of shifting the whole transactional clerical work of advising and just focusing more on the student, we always had a very good retention rate, but it just put it to another level. We were always above 70s, which is for the student population that we have, and for being a regional school. Removing the flagship, the A&M College Station, removing them from the list of system schools, we were number one for more than 10 years in a row. So this actually put us from the low 70s to the high 70s. So the last class, the retention for the class of fall 2019 for fall 2020 was 78%. And before that, we were averaging about 74%. You might say, well, it's only 4 points. Well, if you put it in numbers, that represents more than 150 students. So it went down a little bit on the pandemic, but it didn't go down to the low 70s. It remained at the middle 70s. And again, it might be 1 or 2 points difference, but whenever you're actually talking on raw numbers, it's a huge difference. The other key factor the other key statistics that I'm going to give you is graduation. The class, and the graduation, you need to wait 4 years. Okay, so the first class, the class that came in using scheduler, that were advised by advisors using scheduler, and as students use scheduler, that class was the fall of the fall class of 2017, I believe. That class graduated at a 5 percentage point higher than the previous class. So we were, as an institution, we made some improvements. We were graduating at the low 20s, and then we did some changes in some of the structures that we did, some of the processes, and some of the things that we're handling. We did mid 20s, and it remained at mid 20s. But that 5% jump from one class to the other was just outstanding for me. I saw that and was like, oh my goodness, what happened there? So we went back, and let's put this out there. I mean, a scheduler maybe was not the main thing, but it was a very important thing on some of the operation changes that we did. So that class that they don't know better, they came here and scheduler was already a thing, and we were already using it, and they started using it since they were freshmen. That class graduated at the largest percentage points in school history. They graduated at 30% graduation rate, 4-year graduation rate. The previous class graduated at 25. So if you look at strategic plans of universities, They say that in 10 years, they're going to increase the graduation rate by 5 points. We did it in one. Okay. Yes, maybe the number was low, but having a 5%, 5% increase from one class to the other was just remarkable. It was just amazing to see. The next year went down 1 point. It went down to 29, but we already talking that we are the high 20s, low 30s, rather than the low 20s, mid 20s. So it's huge. It's huge. Again, there are strategic plans developed to improve some of these success measures, and we were able to do it in just 1 year. So those are two very simple of interesting facts that I can tangible data points uh, that I can show that talks about some of the changes that we have done internally at this institution.
What do you think makes the difference? What do you think it is about the shifts that is yielding that like remarkable result? You said it's only 4 points, but I know being a person who managed an office we're very interested in retaining our students, it was very hard to move 1 point. Like we moved 1 percentage point.
Yeah,
We were
yeah,
really
yeah.
excited. And when you think about it in raw students, it's remarkable because those points are actual individual students who are staying in school. What do you think is making it easier for students to stay enrolled and persist on towards graduation?
Well, number one is the fact that you have a tool that can help you identify the best schedule possible. Sometimes if you're in a rush and you're just there trying to build something, you build whatever you find first and just go with it. With a tool like Scheduler, you're actually able to put more into it, and perhaps students might add a class that maybe they didn't see fit, or maybe they didn't know it was available, or they are able. The system is able to provide them with all of the options that are out there. And before they didn't have that. It was again more transactional. It was just one by one, looking at what's open and looking if it was you were able to fix it, and then doing the highlight on the hour grid that all of us remember when we were in college. So students are able to identify all of the schedules that they can possibly have and all the different options, and in a faster way, in a more efficient way. And again, adding an extra class by semester uh, might reduce the amount of students that are graduating in 5 years to 4.5, or those graduating 4.5 to 4, or those graduating 4 to 3.5. So that's number one. And the second one, it will be, like I mentioned before, going back to the actual advising sessions, focusing more on the students, making those advising sessions more meaningful to the students, and planning. You need to talk about what happens. So you have a student that started with a 3.2 GPA by semester, and then is going down 2.9, 2.7, 2.5. So obviously something's happening. So what is going on? At one moment, can you intervene and have time to talk about a possible change of major, perhaps, maybe a possible identification of change of a career at an early stage? And if you identify these things prior to being so late, prior to, you're changing your major when you're a junior rather than changing your major in your first semester as a sophomore, it makes a huge difference, because then you're going to be taking so many classes. If you're going to switch to something that has nothing to do with what you were pursuing, then obviously you have to start from zero sometimes. Well, not from zero, but you know what I mean. You have to take more classes, and it's going to take you longer to graduate. Perhaps you run out of financial aid, or perhaps you no longer will have a scholarship and things like that. And all these things just delay, the graduation, the graduation, the success of graduating student, for the students to graduate on time. So those are the two factors, I think. Putting more options to the students, and focusing more and making more meaningful advising sessions, and that's why I think we're seeing the high success rates that our numbers are showing.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I want to give space for you to share any other lessons that you've learned that you think others doing this kind of work would benefit from.
Yeah, well, I think there are three important elements, and this is, I'm not discovering anything new. Well, there are three important elements that you have to have in place in order to produce an efficient process. Number one is people. You need to have the human capital. You need to train them. You need to find people that are willing to work in student services. And as you know, people working in universities and student services, we didn't come to school to work at universities. We just, it's a profession that we fell in love with for whatever reason, because we had somebody that mentor us, because we had a great experience as a student, things like that. I majored in finance. I never thought that I was going to be in this position. That was not the career that I wanted. It's a career that I fell in love with. So finding these elements is difficult. But not only that, making them love the profession of student affairs, making them love the profession of higher education. Um, you have to work on that. We don't have the highest salaries in entry level positions. So then how do you compensate those things? So having that human capital is important. And then you need to have systems. What systems do you have in place? You have the right technological tools. You have the right software in place. You have the right setup in the software. Is everybody in the university using it? So there are certain software that don't fit the university culture. So finding those things is important. And obviously, sources, and making sure that we find the sources to buy these things. I was one of those, Kathy, that will go to all these conferences and go to the exhibit halls, and I just grabbed the free candies and the free food, and I went to my room, because we never purchased anything, but we were afraid to engage with technology, and we were automatically asking for more people. I need one more person that can help me with the schedule. I need one more advisor. I need one more, and it's just, again, going back to this thing about we don't pay enough, we don't retain well. Having somebody else there is maybe not the solution. Maybe you don't need somebody, you need something, and that something is technology. But losing that fear of technology, I think is something that we need to do. And instead of asking for a salary of, let's say, $35,000 plus benefits, sometimes that's how much the systems cost. And the systems, guess what? The system works 24/7. The systems, they don't get sick. The systems, they don't ask for vacation. And sometimes these are the tools that will help them, the human capital, make their job way better. So you have the humans, and then you have the systems. And I think the third element that you have to throw into this circle is the process. You have the people in the right place. You have the right systems. How are you defining the process? Looking at the processes, like the one I mentioned at the beginning, the handoff to the student. Something that in theory is very simple, but in practice is difficult to do. So do you have steps within your processes that you don't need? Do you have rules that nobody knows what the rules are there for, or nobody cannot trace the root of why that rule was implemented? What sort of things that we have in place that is not, I guess, friendly to the current demands of the students. So looking at your catalog, some of the graduation regulations that you have, are they mandated by the system? Are they mandated by the state? Are they mandated by the institution? Or they were mandated by somebody that doesn't no longer work at the institution? So connecting people, systems, and processes are important. At the moment that you're able to do that connection and for everything to flow correctly, the ones that benefit the most are the students. I always say this: we tend to study a lot why students fail, but we fail to study why we fail the students. And sometimes we don't have the right people in the right positions, we don't have the right systems in place, and we don't have the right processes for the students. So if we're not able to create this workflow internally and to make these things work, we're failing our students, and shame on us, because it is sometimes in our hands to make sure that life is hard as it is, and if we're just creating these obstacles and then creating more bureaucracy in what we do every single day, then we're failing our students. So that is something that I truly believe, and I hope everybody thinks about that. What do you have in place that is not student friendly, and revise it, and make sure that you think about how you can remove those barriers, and the ones that will benefit at the end will be the students, and the rates, graduation, retention, all that will definitely improve.
That's so important. I'm going to leave it there because I think that's really the bottom line, right? What can we do to remove barriers for our students so that they can be successful? And if we're thinking strategically about how to do that, then the metrics will take care of themselves. Thank you so much for your time and coming on the show and sharing your experience.
Thank you, Kathy.